What's up, bookworms? Welcome to episode 92 of the Cantina Book Club podcast, where readers can find interviews with authors of all genres, trad or indie published. I'm Megan, self-proclaimed content queen, here to bring you insights from the authors themselves. Each week features a Cantina conversation with an author. Sometimes they're returning guests, sometimes it's someone new. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on an episode, and feel free to browse through existing episodes so that you could catch a previous interview about a book you finished. Just a heads up that I often use adult language to express my feelings towards these authors and their work, whether the characters need to get their shit together or I'm encouraging the badass FMC to fuck it all and burn the world down. Just please be mindful around listening ears. And also, it's June, happy Pride Month to all who celebrate. Cantina Book Club is an LGBTQ plus friendly space. Keep an eye out on my social media for book suggestions if you want to support authors in the LGBTQ plus community. Check out previous interviews and keep an eye out just to see the next guest could be your favorite author or someone from that community. So happy Pride. For all of you Chicagoland and Midwest readers, I'm going to be a panelist at Books in Bloom, taking place July 11th and 12th at the Sonesta Chicago O'Hare in Rosemont, Illinois. The event is hosted by Chicago North romance writers. For details and tickets, visit chicagobooksinbloom.com. I really hope to see you guys there. And as for books coming out this week, keep an eye out for Smoke on the Wind by Kelly Estes. I haven't started it yet, but I'm going to be interviewing her later this week, and I'm really excited to share an update about it, but just to keep on radar for the interview that's going to be coming out within the next couple of months. Today's episode features a chat with Amy Weinland Daughters. We're talking about her book, You Cannot Mess This Up, a true story that never happened. So this is one of those stories where it's like a memoir, but it's not really a memoir. She kind of imagined what a real life time travel story would be like if she reluctantly traveled back in time to her house when she was 10 years old. So it was interesting. I really enjoyed talking to Amy. Like, our conversation was so fun and enjoyable, and it was so easy to talk to her. I would explain the book to you guys, but I think Amy will do a better job. So without further ado, here is Amy Weinland Daughters. So today we've got Amy Weinland Daughters. We're talking about her book, You Cannot Mess This Up, a true story that never happened. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today. I finished this book not a long time ago, so it's fresh in my brain. Really humorous, really interesting concept. And I didn't know where you were going to go with it, but I enjoyed the time I spent seeing where you went with it. It was a really cool and fun story. So I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to discuss it with you.
Absolutely. So to get started, can you share a summary of the book so that listeners can follow along with the conversation?
Basically, I write myself back in time to my own childhood. And the vehicle I use is I'm supposedly flying home I live in Ohio at the time. I'm flying home to Texas to discuss my parents' plans, like end of life estate plans. And while I'm in the plane, I get transported back to 1978. And then I have a time travel guide who was the pilot, and she drives me basically to my childhood home and says, look, these people think you're a distant cousin. They don't know who you are, but you have to spend 36 hours inside. And so she drops me off, and I'm left with grappling with my two parents who are the same age as me in the story, with my back in time self. And then there's my 12-year-old sister, my 8-year-old brother, and then my 10-year-old off the chain self. And so it's 36 hours. It's super relatable because it's 36 hours back in your own childhood, looking at the way you remembered everything, look at the way everything actually was, only after living a whole nother life before you went and saw it again.
Yeah, it was funny because at first I was like, when I read the synopsis of it, I was like, all right, how is she going to go there? But then it was really funny because the readers have traveled with you where you don't know what's going on. And so it was like, okay, the readers are allowed to really be confused at first too, because so are you as the narrator. But it was really interesting. And we'll get into it of all the layers and the implications and the reflection that you did in the book. It was just so funny because it was a memoir that's not a memoir. It was just like a snippet of you imagined what this might have been like, but then because I'm curious, like we'll get into it because a series of questions I usually ask
ask are in line with what I would say, "What's your background?" This book goes into a snippet of it. It's like
Right.
that you make the reader very you familiarize the reader with who you are and what you do and your family life, your background and stuff like that. I wanna explore that, like, how yeah, like, your background and what led you to bring this unique story to the world.
And I love what you said that it's a memoir because really it is a memoir wrapped up in the tortilla of time travel. So it's a fiction book, so that gave me some leeway. But I came upon writing inspiration because I have a business degree and I was in like purchasing for 15 years. And then my husband's job
Mm,
moved us to the UK for 3 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, this will be a great adventure. I had a 4-year-old kid at the time. And I was like, this is going to be great. We're in our 30s. What an adventure. But then I left my full time job when I got over there. The kid went to the village school, and I was like, wait a second. What am I going to do with all this time? So I took some history classes at the local university, but that wasn't enough. And I'd always written on the side like short stories, or I'd read my emails at work and think they were profound or hilarious. And so I started writing in England because I was desperate to do something. And by the time we left, I had created a little niche for myself with freelance writing. And so once I really started writing, the idea of this book had always kicked around in my head. But I really had to, my journey in writing had to get to a point where I could take myself seriously enough to write it. But my whole intention was I'm going to write a funny back in time book. Like it's going to be hilarious. Like where there's going to be polyester and smoking and no hand sanitizer. And I'm going to write myself back to my childhood and have to watch myself. But once I got into the meat of writing the book, I was like, wait a second. This is going to be like feelings.com because you can't write yourself back into your own childhood and really look at it without
yeah.
unpacking a whole lot of stuff. And so what I ended up doing, and a lot of people have asked me, so did you work with a therapist? I'm like, no, I'm just funny. I'm just funny hot girl. But it turned out to be a catharsis because the real meat of the story, it is funny, but it's so relatable because it's me facing my child self, my parents, my mother. It's facing all these relationships and looking at all these memories through the lens of someone who's in middle age. So it's like a bombshell of emotion.
Yeah, I thought that was so I wanna explore your process because I imagine were you a plotter or were you a pantser? Because 'Cause I'm like, "Okay, what points did you wanna cover? What parts of your pieces of your past or topics did you wanna explore? Because you do, like you said, you have to confront some things and you imagined a lot of what how certain conversations might have gone down or how people might have it's like, how do you perceive something 36 years older? Like, how do you explain the situation of adults at Thanksgiving when your recollection of it as you experienced it, you were, like, in bed by a certain time? Like, you were I 'cause that's totally true. Because it's all of us as we're getting older, we realize, like, when the generations, they get older, they start having kids, and then they look back, "Wait, how was I at this age? How was I at these things? And how what did adults think of me?" when I was this age or that or during this time in my life. And so I thought that was like interesting, like cool how you explored that. And I kind of want to talk about like how like what your process was. Like did you plot it out? Did you have an idea? Did things jump out at you without even expecting it? Stuff like that.
And I started with this core group of memories that I thought were either funny or that I remembered them for some reason from around that time period. And I was going to shove them all into the narrative of this book. But when I sat down to write it, I, and I, it's almost like I went on this mental trip. And I spent a couple weekends because I had little kids at the time that I wrote this book. And so I went to this 70s resort in Ohio and spent 4 or 5 weekends. And I brought the VCR and I brought the photo albums and I imagined myself back in time. And so I had these core memories and I was going to use them as part of the narrative. But as soon as I walked in the door and imagined myself through the door, I was like, wait a second, and thought about after watching videotapes of myself jumping around all over the place, being out of control. I was like, my reaction to her would be, oh my gosh, please stop that right now. You are killing me softly. And then looking at my mother, it all came up in the emotional, just in the deep thought about what that would actually look like to walk through that front door and experience those people. Because I looked at my mother and I was like, wait a second, this woman is just trying to survive 1978. And I could identify that from my life in the 2000s, but I realized she didn't have near the freedom I had. She didn't have near the expectation that she could go do something else. She didn't have near the support system that I have. And I was like, wait a second, this woman is a rock star. And so a lot of
Yeah.
it I just came on from the imagination, from imagining the situation, and then did a lot of heavy research on the time period, which I loved. But
I was gonna say that's a good segue into what I'm curious about, 'cause I'd like to step back in time and to just so many funny moments where you would accidentally slip up and ask or mention things, or and then you had to be like, "Wait, was that it? Did that exist yet?"
right,
And I love how some like, there was a couple sentiments in there where you were like, "These people deserved much better technology than what they were getting."
they were trying to get that football game on a TV, and I was like, wait a second, these people are like, this is
Yeah.
the best TV we've ever seen. I'm like, that is crap. Your TV is crap, and
Yeah.
no one's telling you.
Yeah.
And and that was really, I like nostalgia and older things like the Sears catalog, all that. So that the big joy in the whole thing for me was the research. But really, again, as I imagined myself back in time, I immediately imagined the things that I would miss. Wait a second, I don't have this. Wait a second, I don't have that. So it was easy to bring those things up, but there was a lot of research to get me there. I spent a week in the Houston Public Library going through all the newspapers from that week, reading magazines from that year, looking at catalogs. And then the great thing is, like YouTube, you could spend 2 days watching 1978 newscasts. You can watch commercials. You can watch, and actually, my first the editor was like, "We have got to cut back on some." That's one of the things I needed help filtering through because I loved all of it, and
Yeah.
we had to pick some of it. But actually, when I signed her copy of the book and mailed it to her, I like tried to like bullet point all the scenes we cut because so she would remember this
You,
is
like, annotated it for
yeah,
her reminder,
yeah, just a
like
reminder. That was a great part, and we cut it, but I feel good about it.
that's hilarious. I love that little running inside joke. Oh, thank you, by the way. Like, you might find some surprises in here. That's hilarious. Yeah, because I think I was born in the late '80s, so, like, my a lot of my nostalgia is, like, from the '90s, but I know that, like, my parents, they were born in, like, the '50s, so it's funny, like, how I mentioned, again, as I get older, I get more curious and
Hmm.
wondering what was that like. Because 'cause I'm, like, I'm sitting here, I'll watch, like, the Elvis movie or something, or I'll watch something that was, like, and I realize, "Holy crap, this was in my parents' teenagehood, where this is at this point in their life when this monumental thing happened." And like when Elvis died, like you were a teenager when Elvis died. So I'm like, that's so crazy to me how, and it's remember however long,
Yeah,
you
5 or 6 years it took to,
Exactly.
and I think that's solid advice because I think that that's the obvious question is what are you doing next? But give yourself time to get there, though. As you said,
Yeah.
it's not really going to work until you're where you're supposed to be to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's how I that's how I live my life. That's how I make myself feel better. I'm like, you know what? Just have faith that nothing's whatever I'm working towards isn't going to happen overnight. Like 4 or 5 months down the line, I might be like perfectly positioned. Um, to go Godspeed. You know what I mean? So it's just you never know. You never know. Just like how you were saying, trust the universe. I feel like maybe you've gotten a little proof of the universe to
Hmm.
trust it. Oh,
Absolutely.
like exactly. Okay, so Amy Weinland Daughters, where can we find you online and on social media?
Right. If you go to amydaughters.com, that's got I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, but all the links are there. My books are there, and I'd love to hear from people. So all things are on amydaughters.com.
Perfect. Yeah, just feel free to you,
Oh, and I would
like
love it. Me and little Amy like to receive email and any other
I
communication.
love that. That's perfect. I love that. You Cannot Mess This Up, a true story that never happened. That's available now. Amy, thank you so much for your time and for your authenticity, for diving a little bit deep, for just opening yourself up. And if you're when and if you're gonna release whatever you're working on, feel free to keep in touch.
Okay, conversation, and you asked great, so thank you very much.
And there you go. That was Amy Weinland Daughters talking about her book, You Cannot Mess This Up, a true story that never happened. That book is now. Check out the show notes where you can find links to purchase the book or where to find Amy online and on social media. Please also find Cantina Book Club online and on social media. I'm working on a YouTube channel, so as long as you guys are keeping up with that, I totally appreciate it. Rate, review, subscribe. If you need book recommendations, please check out cantinabookclub.com. I'm always reviewing books from all sorts of genres. If you're finding books that you like and want to leave a rating or review, it really does help them out. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening.